Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. Today we're going to show you how to get started marketing a criminal defense practice online. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available for replay online probably early next week. We'll also make the slides from this webinar available at that time, so there's no need to take notes. We have a lot of ground to cover today, including 3 specialists who are going to talk about different aspects of getting started the right way. This webinar is projected to last about 2 hours. We did one on DUI law last week and it went a little bit over, but we're going to try to keep it to right at the 2 hours. We're not going to be able to stop to answer questions during the presentation, but if you are having technical difficulties with the GoToWebinar audio or video, please let us know via the chat area or the questions area in the GoToWebinar control panel. We will have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation. So if you have questions along the way, please add them to the questions area or send us a public or private chat message and we'll address them at the end of the webinar. My name is Dan Jaffe. Before becoming the full-time CEO of Lawlytics in 2011, I built successful law firms in Washington State and in Arizona, and then founded a highly successful online legal directory for DUI attorneys that was later acquired by a large internet company. During my years of law practice, I made a lot of marketing investments and got badly burned several times. I realized that nobody cared about my practice like I did, and that in order to succeed, I needed to understand how the internet works, and I needed to be in control of my marketing. So I did the heavy lifting to figure out how this works early on, and today I love sharing this information and showing my fellow attorneys how this stuff really works. We have a great program for you today. Each of our presenters is a specialist in her own area. I'm going to introduce each of them to you now so we can move rapidly from one presenter to the next without delay once we get started. Victoria Blute comes from a journalism background and is the community manager here at Lawlytics. If you're a frequent reader of our blog, you're probably already familiar with her work. Victoria is going to talk about how your potential clients use the internet and how you can attract them and capture their business by understanding the basics of how the internet works. Rachel Shalat holds a JD and a master's and practiced criminal defense before joining Lawlytics. She is the vice president of content operation here at Lawlytics, which means that she is in charge of all of our content operations, which produce millions of written words for our members' websites and blogs each year. Rachel will discuss content strategies specific to starting a criminal defense web presence. Sophia Oliboni holds a master's degree in web design and is a design specialist here at Lawlytics. When our new members sign up for our service, she and her team help them choose their design preferences based on their goals. Today, Sophia is going to walk you through some of the things that all attorneys should know about website design. Before we get to the presenters, I want to spend a bit of time on foundational items that attorneys often overlook when it comes to starting to market a criminal defense practice online. The marketing of a criminal defense practice has changed in recent years and is continuing to evolve quickly. For attorneys who are willing to evolve with it, this presents an opportunity to make a lot of money. It presents a way to get ahead of established and even market-leading law firms that aren't adapting to the changing landscape. The internet has become the great equalizer. No longer is marketing success for criminal defense lawyers simply a matter of budget and the willingness to take financial risk. Now any attorney can break into criminal defense law with a minimum financial investment, and previously established attorneys are not safe no matter how big their budget or how solidified their reputation. This webinar will show you how to lay the foundation to compete now and into the foreseeable future. The things that we'll discuss require you to expend some effort, or they require you to budget to pay somebody for their efforts. Done right, the outcome of either path is the same. Whichever path you choose, when you make the commitment to building the foundation of your criminal defense practice marketing the right way, and you understand the strategy behind it, the time and money you spend will not be wasted. What's great about the evolution of marketing online for criminal defense is that any attorney, anywhere, can get started easily and cost effectively. That's what this webinar is all about. And when you know how to avoid the traps and tricks that too many lawyers fall into while they're asleep at the switch, and learn how to do a few simple things, there's a ton of money to be made. Today's webinar is the first in a series of 3 that will take you from just getting started marketing a criminal defense firm to market domination. Today we'll cover the basics. We hope today's webinar will provide you with a solid understanding and motivation to get started in the right direction, or restart it if you need to, along the way to success. The next webinar in this series will focus on growing a criminal defense practice. For that webinar, we'll assume that you already understand the fundamentals and that you've applied them at least at a basic level to your law firm's website and blog. That webinar will show you how the real money is made for most law firms. We'll take a much deeper dive into the forces that drive online success, including content and reputation management, and we'll give you a more detailed content roadmap to develop your criminal defense marketing. The final webinar in this series will focus on crossing the chasm between growing and having a thriving law practice using the internet and creating a truly dominant one. We have customers who are truly dominating their markets at this moment, and I can tell you that each of them started with the fundamentals that we're going to be going over today. The final webinar in this series, the Domination one, which occurs in March, will show you that extra 2 to 3% difference that you can make once you have all of the fundamentals in place. That 2 to 3% difference can make a huge difference and be a huge needle mover at scale. But these are things that you shouldn't even think about implementing until you actually have that foundation built, which is what we're going to talk about today and next month. If you're looking to take your criminal defense marketing to the pinnacle of success, we recommend that you attend or watch all 3 on demand and implement our recommendations in chronological order. This webinar is for lawyers and staff members of law firms that are currently handling criminal defense cases or that plan to in the future. You do not need to be a Lawlytics member to benefit from this webinar, but everything that we will be talking about will be easier to implement if you are a member, because the Lawlytics system and service is built and optimized for this purpose. If you're just getting started with your website, this webinar is a great place to start. And if your website isn't working, it's likely because one or more of the fundamentals that we're going to cover today and in the next webinar in this series have been ignored or poorly implemented. If you're here, it's probably because you want your website to work to bring in more criminal defense clients and more referrals. But being here isn't enough. There are no participation trophies in the practice of law. Either you get the client's business or you don't. If you want to succeed, you will need to commit to investing either your time or your money, and sometimes both. There are no shortcuts or magic tricks that will make you successful, but there is a roadmap. The goal of this session is simple. We want you to understand how to build your firm's online marketing for criminal defense using sound and sustainable strategies, and to be able to use that foundation to effectively take your marketing as far as you want it to go. We hope that what you learned today will help you capture more opportunities so that your success will open the door to even greater levels of marketing achievement and stability. By the time this webinar is over, we hope you'll have a good foundation to do the following. Start smart. You only need to do a few things well from the start as long as you avoid the traps. Don't overcomplicate. Building a thriving law firm web presence is easier than most attorneys think. And your participation matters. Nobody cares about your practice as much as you do. You need to be involved and you need to be in control. This does not mean that you need to do everything yourself or even anything yourself, but you do need to know what needs to be done and why it needs to be done so you can recognize value and avoid wasting time and money. The good news is that participation is easy and it can actually be fun. This webinar will show you how. You have many choices of companies and technologies to design, build, host, and help you market your law firm's website. At Lawlytics, we certainly do all that, and we have a lot of competition. So what is Lawlytics and how are we different? Our company is obsessed with the pursuit of the most efficient method of marketing for each law firm. There are 2 major variables of efficiency, time and money. Lawlytics was created to empower law firms to have unlimited marketing success without wasting either time or money. We have two different types of competitors here at Lawlytics. On the one side are full-service marketing companies like FindLaw and Martin Del Nolo. Lawlytics is built to give attorneys all of the upsides of using a full-service company without exposing you to the risks and the downsides. On the other side of our competition equation are do-it-yourself website programs like WordPress, Wix, and GoDaddy. These programs are either free to use or very inexpensive. These programs also come with steep opportunity costs, and attorneys often struggle to make them work, wasting their time and missing opportunities along the way. While both full-service companies and do-it-yourself platforms are viable options for lawyers, Lawlytics offers a more practical solution for lawyers. Our company works exclusively with law firms, and our services are adaptable to every stage of a law firm's growth. Our members can start as small as they choose and grow as big as they decide without taking dangerous risks or committing to things that might not work. And our software is built exclusively for lawyers, so the learning curve is easy, enabling our members to add to and edit their websites and turn their efforts into new business without struggling. Lawlytics is a member-based law firm website marketing service. Our software and our services is specifically built and optimized for law firms. For those of you who are not yet Lawlytics members, and I see that some of the people attending are, some of you are not yet, here's how the process works. The first step is to have a conversation with us to make sure there is alignment between your needs, your goals of your firm, and our service. Once you've made the determination that Lawlytics is the right service for you, the next step is starting your firm's membership. We'll guide you through that process, which takes about 5 minutes online. Then we'll start the process of setting up and styling your law firm's website. This is a collaborative process, and you'll work with one of our full-time professional designers one-on-one to achieve the optimal look and feel for your site to meet your goals. The next step is adding content to your website. The goal of this phase is to have enough content to be able to successfully launch your law firm's website. If you already have an existing website that you want to import into Lawlytics, we have that process of transitioning from other platforms to our platform down to a science. If you're starting a new website with Lawlytics, we will guide you through the content that you need to launch. Rachel will talk later in this webinar about what content is needed to launch a criminal defense website and how to build a strong foundation now to prepare for all future growth that you want to do. You can choose to create your own content with us, or you can have our team of professional writers do some or all of it for you. When your site is ready, we'll launch it for you. If you're switching from another provider, we'll make sure that there is no downtime and that there's no loss of traffic in the process. When you're switching to whether you're switching to Lawlytics or whether you're starting fresh, we'll take care of all of the technical details for you. Once your site is launched, we'll show you how to use the Lawlytics system to add and edit your website, regardless of your previous tech experience. We can take you from zero to highly competent very quickly. And this is because our system was built for busy lawyers who don't really have the time to mess around with complicated technology. You'll be able to instantly add and edit office locations, attorney bios, case results, recommendations, substantive pages, and blog posts. You'll be able to rearrange your site's menu by simply grabbing items and dragging and dropping them around. You'll be able to create simple and detailed web forms to capture information from your potential clients. You'll be able to easily insert pictures, videos, documents, and maps into your pages of your website and blog posts. In short, you'll have the power to be as involved in your own website as you choose to be. Beyond the mechanics, we'll teach you how to implement a strategy that best suits the market, your practice area or areas, and the ambitions of your law firm. We'll show you what works and how to create it without wasting time or money. And even though you'll be able to do it yourself, if you ever choose not to or just don't have the time or energy, you can delegate any or all of the efforts to us. You likely already understand the importance of having a website for your criminal defense practice. The urgent need for counsel, combined with the embarrassing nature of being arrested, means that many defendants seek counsel online instead of getting referrals, even when they have a network that would otherwise be able to provide them with a referral. But I want to take a moment to look at the most important reasons why it's essential to not just have a website, but to invest in the kind of website that we'll be showing you how to build during this series. Keeping these reasons in mind will be just as important in the growth and domination phases of your firm's marketing as they are in this start phase. Your potential criminal defense clients are online already, and they're already using the internet to do research and make decisions. Even when criminal defense clients are referred directly to you in your firm, they will still interact with your web presence before making the decision to hire you. If you don't have a website, or if your website is unfindable or it's shoddy, you're going to be at the mercy of everything else about you that exists online, and you have little or no control over those things. With a website, you have complete control over your messaging, and you have the opportunity to win the hearts and minds of your potential clients. Your website is there to educate your potential clients about their case, their rights, and their options. It's also there to make a personal connection between you and your potential clients, and to cause your potential clients to like you and want to hire you. The most important functions of your law firm's website are to, 1, show that you care, 2, show what you know, and 3, show that you're successful and are likely to be successful in their case in the future. These things set the tone for the attorney-client relationship because they establish trust, they establish authority, and they establish confidence. And when you have your potential clients' trust and confidence, and when they see you as an authority before the attorney-client relationship even begins, your chances of them hiring you drastically increase. And the benefits go well beyond marketing and sales. Establishing trust, authority, and confidence helps frame the attorney-client relationship and also sets expectations. This ultimately makes the experience easier and more rewarding for both you and your clients. As we present this webinar, it's now January 2017. If you're just getting started with your law firm's website, you're already very late to the game. But that's okay, because for better or for worse, most attorneys who have been in the game for many years have not been playing it well. And this is typically because they've either been doing the wrong things and listening to the wrong people, or they've just let it get way out of date. Website marketing for criminal defense practices works, and it can work better than any other source of business when done right. So while everyone is doing it, the fact that most attorneys don't have websites that are performing to their full potential is an opportunity for you and your criminal defense practice. Having a website is a matter of basic business survival, but having a website that you consciously cultivate using the Lawlytics system and the information that you'll get in this webinar series and from other webinars that we've done that you can watch on demand, you can really elevate your practice by multitudes. We've seen attorneys who are struggling to stay in business start using the Lawlytics system and following our recommendations become secure and stable in their practices. We've seen attorneys who thought that they were doing very well in their practices start using the Lawlytics system and methodology and literally double their business while actually decreasing their marketing expenses. There's no magic trick here. It's a proven method, and it's a window of opportunity. Creating a worthwhile website for your law firm is like investing with compounding interest. The earlier you start, the better off you'll be in the long run. And like sound investing, there need not be anything fancy here. You don't need tricks. You don't need cheats. You don't need hacks. All you need is an understanding of the fundamentals and the technology and time to leverage those fundamentals effectively over time. At Lawlytics, we use the phrase, quote-unquote, marketing assets quite regularly. I want to take a moment to explain what we mean by that and tell you why it's important. Most marketing that you do for your law firm falls into the category of an expense. The nature of most advertising is that you buy it, it gets used up, and then it's gone forever. Let's look at some examples of marketing that fall into the expense category. Yellow page advertising is an expense. You pay for the year, and then people throw the book away and it's no longer useful. Same with billboard advertising. Once the time that you've paid for is done, so is the benefit the billboard creates. Same with radio and TV. These are clear-cut examples. But online, it's not always so obvious. When you, for example, rent a directory listing or a sponsored listing or a premium spot, you're renting disposable advertising, and this is an expense. If you don't renew and continue to pay, that marketing material goes away. Pay-per-click advertising is also an expense. You make a bid for a customer of a search engine to click on your ad, and when they do, that money is gone forever. And that's regardless of whether that was a viable potential client, one of your competitors, or a marketing person clicking on your ad to try to cold call you to sell you more marketing. It's the same thing with banner ads, remarketing ads, online magazine ads, social media ads, etc. It all burns money without creating anything of lasting value. But content placed on a website that you own is a marketing asset because once the content is produced, it can continue to produce business for you indefinitely. Think of it like owning a building in a prime location with signage. Once the building is owned and that sign is paid off, each additional impression on passers-by that sign makes costs you nothing, of course, aside from the building infrastructure, maintenance costs, and so forth. With content, you invest your efforts or your dollars in creating it once, and if done well, your potential clients will interact with it for years to come. With Lawlytics, you own your website and all of your content, and we're here to help you strategically maintain and grow that infrastructure. Think of your investment with Lawlytics as the infrastructure costs that you would spend on that building. It's important to note that just because you create content online does not always mean that you own it. For example, if you're writing answers for legal directories or forums that you don't own, you're investing in creating assets for the company that owns the directory or the forum. And to benefit from those assets, those written assets that you've created for them, you'll likely have to pay them. If not now, then in the future, because they're certainly involved in the business to make money as well. And if you don't pay them, your efforts and your name will then serve to attract your potential clients to any of your competitors who are willing to pay those directory companies for the ad that is then supported by your previous efforts. This is a topic that could, in and of itself, fill more than a 2-hour webinar. And if you want to go deeper into the topic and find out a lot of the inside baseball on it, go to Google and search for commoditization of lawyers and read the piece that I wrote on the subject a couple of years ago. It's even more relevant today based on what's going on. Because here at Lawlytics we're obsessed with helping lawyers find the most efficient ways to market their firms online, and because we're sticklers about not letting attorneys waste their time or their money, it bears repeating that everything that Lawlytics does and helps you do is geared towards creating appreciating marketing assets that you own and control. In a few moments, Tori, Rachel, and Sophia will talk to you about various aspects of building appreciating assets for your law firm's website. I have one last slide before I turn the floor over to Victoria, and I want to spend a few moments talking about content. So what is content marketing and why should lawyers be doing it? Most lawyers think that they need a thing called SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. It's about making it easy for potential clients to find your law firm through free search engine results. Content marketing is the most important ingredient in SEO. And without enough high-quality content, no other aspects of what is commonly sold as SEO will ever be effective. When you sit across the desk from a potential criminal defense client, you're engaged in a conversation. You're engaged in a discovery process. You're evaluating the potential client's case and their ability to pay you, and your potential client is evaluating your ability to help him or her with their case. But during that conversation, you're also engaged in marketing and sales. Everything that you say about your firm and yourself and their case in general guides their perception of you and your firm. Everything that they see in your office, the physical surroundings, the pictures on the wall, the degrees, the way that your receptionist greets them, the way that your conference room is organized, the law books on the shelf, everything they see helps them create a story of who you are and whether they want to do business with you. Content marketing is about preloading your potential clients' perceptions about you and your firm. The information that you would normally provide them at the first meeting, that you can put on the website, that's what you want to do. The more of it, the better. And here's why. And a lot of people come to us and they say, well, isn't that giving information away? Well, yes, it is, but it's giving it away strategically in a way that is calculated to not only help them, but also help you in your practice. Your potential criminal defense clients are already searching for answers as much as they're searching for an attorney when they go online. When you provide them with complete and helpful answers as opposed to keyword-based nonsense or self-serving marketing copy, something very efficient happens. So the first thing is that the search engines really appreciate it and give it preference. Google wants to provide the best results for its customers so that they'll keep returning. And so when you provide those answers, it rewards you with them. Your clients then find it. And what they find is directly responsive to the question that they happen to ask Google or the other search engines. They then read it and they instantly know that you care. They know that you know your stuff. And they suspect that therefore that you're successful. And because they're on a website that has all the information about your firm, they can investigate that further, see your case results, see your client testimonials, and so forth. And then what happens is they trust you before you ever speak with them because you've already helped them out by giving them the information. They become much more likely to contact you, and they become much more likely to hire you. And when they do, they're easier to manage because their expectations are aligned with the law and with the information that you already want them to have. In the next two segments of this webinar, Victoria and Rachel are going to go into detail about the basics of getting started on the right track with high-quality content for your criminal defense practice. And with that, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Victoria, who's going to talk about the basics of the search engines and how to get started building your criminal defense web presence the right way.
Thanks, Dan. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, thank you. Good morning to those of you who are listening, and good afternoon to our East Coast viewers. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name is Victoria Blute, and I am the Community Manager of Lawlytics. My job is to keep attorneys on the cutting edge of web technologies and online legal marketing, and to help you learn about what works on the web. So now that Dan has discussed a little bit about the foundational aspects of marketing your criminal defense firm, I'm going to explain to you how your potential clients use the internet. I'm also going to explain how they don't use the internet. We'll talk a little bit about how to recognize some of the myths that go along with online legal marketing and what you need to attract potential clients to your firm. And a lot of that starts with understanding some terminology and also understanding how the internet actually works. So So the first slide that I want to discuss here is going to set the tone for a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, and it's important for whether or not you're familiar with this term. And if you are, I want you to check your assumptions about what you think this term means, and that term is, as Dan said, SEO. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and I've heard it described a number of different ways. Some descriptions I've heard are fairly accurate, others are completely off the mark, but I think the best way to describe SEO is to say that it's the process of growing your website's visibility in organic search engine results. So in other words, it's helping more potential clients find you on the search engines. For those of you who are familiar with this term and are familiar with this idea, this may seem like a rather obvious description, and I may end up discussing some topics that seem quite basic, but it's important to bring it up because attorneys sometimes get caught in this trap of maybe understanding what SEO is as it's defined right here, but they make some mistakes in how that process is carried out. So if you have some preconceived notions about how this works, check your assumptions with what we're saying, and if this is all new to you and you're starting with a blank slate, that's great too. So let's first talk about how search engines work, and then we're going to talk about how potential clients are using search engines to find you. Search by finding, gathering, and displaying relevant information to those who are searching for it. And when Google began as a company, that's all of the world's information, and that's kind of how we got here. That search engines go through. And if you hear me say, know that the process is similar for all search. Of course, the most popular search engine, and they also hold the dominant market share. People certainly use Bing, they use Yahoo search, but there's a reason that Google is also a verb, as in to Google, and that is because it's the best and most popular method for finding information at this point. Okay, so step one is crawling. You'll hear other terms for crawling. You'll hear crawlers defined rather as spiders or bots, but whatever you want to call it, Google has these bots that are busy crawling the web. And what I mean when I say crawling is that these robots follow link from page to page to page to see what's there. Google then sorts those pages by the content that's on them and some other factors. Once Google finds a web page and figures out what's on there, it adds that page to its massive 100 million gigabyte index. And Google does this so that it can quickly access that information again when a search engine user asks a relevant question or makes a relevant query. The last step is retrieval, and that's what all of the crawling and indexing is for in the first place. At this point, Google gets a query and then quickly decides what information is most relevant. It pulls that information from its index and then delivers those pages as search engine results. For example, if somebody searches for what happens if you get caught driving on a suspended license in Arizona, or what's the punishment for petty theft in California, Google will search through its index looking for the most relevant answers to that question. How Google makes a decision about what results are the most relevant is to some degree a mystery. There are hundreds of different factors in that decision, and they all hold different weight. And Google doesn't tell us about what those are exactly. But the company has famously said that they want you to make websites that are for people, not for search engines. If you're going to make a website for a person and not a search engine, how do you do that exactly? And what that requires is an understanding about how people, and in this case your potential clients, actually use search engines. And this is an area where there can be a little bit of a disconnect for attorneys. But when you understand how this works and you're able to put it into action, your marketing can really take off. So let's talk about how your potential clients use search engines to find your firm. So we'll start this one with a hypothetical scenario. For a moment, I want you to imagine that you are your law firm's potential client. in your mind, map the route that a potential client takes from needing an attorney to finding your law firm's website and contacting you. What does that look like in your mind? Here is what we hear from a lot of attorneys, and we'll use criminal defense as an example. Here, does your answer look a little bit like this? My potential client opens their laptop, they go to Google, and then because they need a criminal defense attorney in Arizona, they conduct a search for criminal defense attorney Arizona. They find my website because I'm a criminal defense attorney in Arizona, and then they contact my law firm. Does your answer look something like this one? If it does, this is a common misunderstanding for some attorneys when they think about how potential clients search for them online. They tend to assume that the path to successfully marketing their firm works in this way, but when they think that it works in this way, they end up frustrated and they end up spending money and time on things that they don't need. So to do your marketing efficiently and to do it cost effectively online, there's one major component that you need that Dan talked about earlier, and that is this. Content. So the shortest answer to explain what SEO is really about and how to attract potential clients is that your website needs content, and we're going to talk about content in depth. But to understand why content is the answer to this, we have to understand why that hypothetical scenario I mentioned makes absolutely no sense. So in that example, there are three possible assumptions. The first is that potential clients usually know that they need an attorney before they conduct a search. The second is that potential clients usually search for attorneys directly. And the third is that potential clients usually conduct basic keyword searches to find an attorney. There's a potential fourth assumption here, and that's that your potential client is using a laptop rather than a mobile device. And mobile-friendly sites, that's something that we're going to discuss a little bit later. But let's look at each of those three assumptions, and let's explain why that's not how clients use search engines and why content is actually the solution. So that first assumption is that potential clients usually know they need an attorney before they conduct a search. Potential clients do not always know that they need an attorney before they go to Google. What they often know is that they have a problem and they're not sure how to solve it. So the first part of that scenario is right. They'll open their laptops, they'll go to Google, but what they do next is that they often conduct a question-based search. So instead of searches like criminal defense attorney in New York, a potential client might ask, what should I do if I got arrested for shoplifting in New York? Potential clients may suspect that they need an attorney. At that point, though, they may still do research about how their current problem could affect them. They may ask if an arrest will affect their current job, whether or not they have to disclose an arrest on a job application, what punishments they could face, or simply what they need to do next. The thing that links their question, what links the results that Google returns, and what links your criminal defense firm together is content. So remember that when somebody asks Google a question, Google's main focus is to return the most relevant results to the person who made that search. This is what Google is talking about when it talks about making websites for people and not for search engines. People need answers. Google's job is to provide them. And they want the best content that they can offer their users. It's the entire basis of their business model. Google is the dominant search engine because that company is able to provide the best answers of any search engine so far. And if your website is providing insightful content that answers those questions, your potential clients are able to access that information and connect with you. That's not only how you increase your visibility, it really helps you to increase your ability to actually connect with those potential clients and to build your business. Okay, so the second assumption is that potential clients usually search for attorneys directly, and again, this is not true. Potential clients do not always search for attorneys directly, And this is sort of a flawed assumption because it assumes that potential clients search for an attorney in the same way that they might search for a t-shirt brand at a local store. So somebody might search for Hanes t-shirts, Target, San Diego to see if a local Target happens to have that shirt brand in stock. But what we have to keep in mind is that a t-shirt is a consumer product. That person likely knows roughly what they want and they know where they want to buy it. It's an easy decision. Choosing a criminal defense attorney is a much more important and complex process, and it's one that has real effects for your potential client. So despite the attempted commoditization of lawyers by the legal marketing industry, attorneys are not consumer products, and potential clients don't search for attorneys in the same way that they might a t-shirt. The third assumption is that potential clients usually conduct keyword-based searches or basic keyword searches to find an attorney. So in that example we were talking about earlier, that basic keyword search was criminal defense attorney Arizona. For a moment, consider the basic keyword search for Hanes t-shirts Target. Now this example assumes that a person will conduct a vague search. Maybe this person just wants to see if Target carries Hanes t-shirts, but if that person already knows what they want, they are much more likely to conduct a highly specific search. So think about the different results you get by searching for Hanes t-shirts Target versus Hanes men's V-neck white t-shirts size XL Target San Diego. That first search will bring you a lot of different results about a lot of different shirts. The second search will very quickly tell you whether that store has exactly what it is that you're looking for. And my point in saying this is that people don't want to sift through results. They need an immediate answer, and in the digital age, they tend to expect it. The same goes for your potential clients when they ask questions of Google. They're not likely to search for California criminal defense attorney or petty theft arrest and then scan through hundreds of results. They have a question about their problem and they want an answer to something very specific. What they're more likely to do is to ask questions like, does driving on a suspended license carry jail time in Nevada? Or do I have to explain an assault arrest on a California job application? Those are specific questions, and when potential clients ask specific questions, Google will try to provide specific results. When you answer those kinds of questions with quality content on your law firm's website and blog, you're more likely to be found in search results because your content closely matches the questions that your potential clients have and that they're searching for. By giving them that information that they need, you're likely to create a bond of trust and one that encourages them to contact your law firm. So here's an example of how law firm SEO actually works for attorneys. So a potential client conducts a search like, do I have to explain an assault arrest on a California job application? Or maybe they search for something like, I was arrested for possession of marijuana, what are my rights in Arizona or Phoenix or Maricopa County or your province or township or neighborhood, etc. At this point, you've written a blog post about this topic that has lots of useful information. You've written the post in language that the potential client uses, and that makes it easy for them to understand. Your potential client will read what you have to say, and if it helps to answer their question, now that they're visiting your law firm's blog or website, they're going to look around and read other content that you've written as well. And when what you've written is helpful and informative, your potential client begins to build that bond of trust with you. Your content demonstrates that you understand their problem and that you know what the potential client should do. So at this point, they're likely to reach out to you when they want more information or when they're ready to hire you. Now this is an example of how your potential clients actually use search engines and how they're likely to connect with you online. Now there's one point that I would like to make quickly, and that is this. So I know that I said earlier that your potential clients don't usually type in basic keywords, so you might be asking yourself why in the last example there were basic keywords like assault arrest. let me first say that words like that or like criminal defense attorney are keywords that are related to your practice, but to compete for rank with those words alone can be very difficult, both in organic search, and by that I mean search you aren't paying for, and also if you choose to do pay-per-click advertising. Legal terms are historically among the most expensive and the most sought after. So how can a small firm rank for basic terms like that? And the answer to that is by adding those terms to a long-tail keyword, as well as using long-tail keywords in specific places on your firm's website and blog. Here's a quick doodle I did that explains why long-tail keywords are effective for criminal defense law firms. Long-tail keywords are those that are incorporated into a more complex question or phrase, and that narrows the window and creates a more specific search. And this is really how many people search online. This diagram illustrates the value in going after those long-tail keywords. So on the y-axis we have the degree of competition and cost for a keyword. So the higher on the y-axis, the higher the cost and the higher the competition for such a keyword. On the x-axis, we have the likelihood that a potential client converts, or in this case, contacts your firm. And the further left you are, the less likely an individual is to convert, to contact you. Let's look at a single word phrase, the area marked in green here. So a single word phrase would be attorney. That's a very non-specific keyword, and there's a lot of competition, not a lot of likelihood for conversion here. Nobody types the word attorney into Google and then scrolls through pages and pages and pages of results. Now, if we get slightly more specific with criminal defense attorney or criminal defense attorney Texas, as you see in orange, that's more specific than attorney, but it's still a highly sought after term, and maybe it's only slightly more likely to convert someone who searches for it. Again, potential clients don't usually search in this way. Let's look at the part in blue here. Here we have some highly descriptive sort of phrases, the kinds of questions your potential clients or their family members are likely to ask. These are ones that have a much higher likelihood of converting people because they directly address the kinds of questions that potential clients ask. There is far less competition for these terms, and there are millions of long-tail keyword phrases that you can target. So, with so much competition for some popular keywords, it's nearly impossible to have a new law firm website rank organically, and by that I mean not paid search, for those popular terms. And if you do pay to compete for those terms through disposable advertising like pay-per-click, you may pay a lot of money to compete for web visitors who may or may not click on your ads or may not be potential clients for your firm. Ad blockers as well have made it easier than ever for people to ignore ads, and that's even outside of regular ad blindness. People are so bombarded with messages every single day that they don't even see them anymore, but ad blockers add a new element to the mix in that you may well be paying for ads that people never even see. I'm sure there is a question that some of you have at this point, and that is, can I only compete for long-tail keywords? And the answer to that is no. There are small law firms that rank very well for popular law firm keywords, ones like criminal defense attorney, but how they got there is often a byproduct of publishing a lot of original, useful content that's related to those terms. And that content is likely in the form of long-tail keywords and phrases. For example, a small law firm may not be able to compete for a term like criminal defense attorney California, but the attorney can compete for related searches when they write a significant volume of content that addresses questions like, I got arrested in California for possession of marijuana and I had a suspended license, what do I do? Or do I have to explain an assault arrest on a California job application? Alternatively, you might have something like, I got arrested for driving on a suspended license in Nevada, do I need a defense attorney? So in these instances, you're not only optimizing for the extremely specific phrase, but you're also optimizing for the terms that it contains, like defense attorney and Nevada. Okay, So now that we've talked about how all of this actually works, let's talk a little bit about some SEO-related myths, because this is often where attorneys get tripped up, and there's no reason for them to. Now that you understand a little bit more about how the internet works and how your potential clients use search engines, the reasons why these myths don't make sense and can ultimately cost your firm a lot of wasted time or a lot of wasted money will start to make sense to you. And the first myth that I want to address is what happens when somebody promises that they can provide you with quick results. And by that I mean somebody telling you that you can rank for an incredibly popular keyword in a few weeks, these kinds of promises. Even the absolute best law firm SEO strategist has no control over what Google or any other search engine does. And building up your content takes some time. It's really not a one-and-done magical sort of process, and it's something you're always going to be working on and continually adding to. If someone tells you that they can get your law firm to the quote-unquote top of Google in 3 weeks, there is just no way. And that brings me to my next point, and that is the promise of the top of Google. There is no such thing. These two things are related to each other in that they have to do with the myth of overnight success in law firm marketing. So for any Google search that you make, there is a #1 ranking position, but there's no top of Google. If you search for a basic keyword phrase like criminal defense attorney Los Angeles, the results that you'll receive are different based on the day that you search, based on the location that you search from, the browser that you're using, the device that you're searching on, among other factors. Just about the only thing that will be the same about each of these searches that your potential clients do is that they're all going to be different. So to assume that potential clients search for basic keyword phrases like the one that we just discussed assumes, again, that they know they need an attorney and search exactly for those terms. And we know that's not always the case. Potential clients often search by asking Google questions about their case or problem. And those questions may include those basic keyword terms. But those basic terms, as we have now learned, are often nestled into long-tail phrases. A majority of daily searches are completely unique, and for each unique search, you'll get a unique set of search results. The next myth is that trying to learn SEO for your criminal defense firm is complicated or that you don't have the time to learn, and that, of course, is not true. You'll learn a large part of what you need to know today just by sitting here. And as you can see, what's more complicated than writing content is trying to struggle with methods and tactics that don't work and that are based on false assumptions. That is far more complicated than simply taking the time to know what works from the outset and then building on that. Next up is the special relationship with Google. This is one that comes up every once in a while, whether somebody is cold calling your firm to tell you that they have a special relationship with Google and that they can get you to the top of Google in a week, or that they know something special about a Google algorithm update. All of this is nonsense. Now, marketers can be Google partners, or they can resell Google products like PPC ads or Google Apps, but none of those things will help you, the attorney, with your SEO. Lastly, the myth that there is some massive secret to ranking well. Like I said, Google's ranking factor and their relative weights are a secret, but what's not a secret, and it never has been a secret, is that Google wants you to write lots of quality content for your website so that they can provide it to the people who are asking questions. They want to provide the best content. That's what they're looking for. So when you write useful, insightful content that helps your potential clients, and you do that on a regular basis, Google is paying attention to that and can reward you with better placement in search engine results. The only secret that there might be to online legal marketing is that content is key, and if you're not writing it, your competitors are going to be. So here are some other common myths that are old, dating back to the early days of search engines, but they're persistent, so I want to bring them up. The first is keyword meta tags. So early on, meta tags were actually an important part of the SEO process, and for those of you who don't remember this, what you'd do is you'd include the keyword meta tags that you wanted your site to rank for, and then those pages would come up in results for relevant queries. Unfortunately, this process was very quickly used and abused by spammers so much that it got dropped as an important signal because it frustrated users who were looking for actual information. And what this was doing ended up being in direct conflict with what Google's trying to do. They don't have a business if they can't provide people with the best search engines for the questions that they have. And it's why they've worked so hard on algorithm updates to ensure that the people who are trying to cheat the system can't do so. The next one is more web pages being equivalent to better ranking. Not true. So not only is this myth untrue, it can also harm your law firm's web presence. More pages, not always equivalent to a better search engine ranking. Now, there are large law firm websites that rank well with the search engines. Those law firm websites do have thousands and thousands of pages, but the key difference is that those pages are filled with useful content for potential clients, and they've been built up with quality content over time, so really meaty stuff. These pages weren't the kinds of pages that were hastily assembled. They were carefully crafted to provide potential clients with the information that's the most important to them. Now, a website can be large in terms of the number of pages that it has, but if you're just adding pages without good content to support them, that can really be a recipe for trouble. If you publish lots of pages without the content that's necessary to make those pages valuable to web users, it's unlikely to bring your law firm better rankings. And in fact, it may even hurt your law firm's rankings. I pulled a little quote from Google's Webmaster Guidelines that I thought was relevant, and they say that one of the most important steps in improving your site's ranking in Google search results is to ensure that it contains plenty of rich information that includes relevant keywords used appropriately that indicate the subject matter of your content. However, some webmasters attempt to improve their page's ranking and attract visitors by creating pages with many words but little or no authentic content. Google will take action against domains that try to rank more highly just by showing scraped or other cookie-cutter pages that don't add substantial value to users. So that brings me to my next point, which is overvaluing keywords or keyword stuffing. So this is one of those persistent myths that causes attorneys to struggle. And whether that's a matter of obsessing over the top keywords or stuffing keywords into your web pages, this is another thing that can damage your web presence. And for those of you who aren't familiar, when I talk about keyword stuffing, what I mean is the myth of keyword density. People think that how many times a keyword shows up on a page has absolutely everything to do with how search engines determine relevancy and ranking, and that's simply not true. This is one of those myths that has been proven not to be true again and again, but there are still SEO providers who push this idea. Okay, last one, and that is that spending money on pay-per-click advertising helps your organic results, and again, not true. In fact, search engines have done work to ensure that this doesn't happen. There is not any sort of special access or consideration that's provided by search engines for those who spend money, or as it often happens, spend more and more money on paid search. Okay. So we've now covered a lot of the big myths that surround online legal marketing. Let's go back to the big thing that your website needs, and that's content. Attorneys, whether they realize it or not, have a content problem, as illustrated by this little diagram here. So to do successful online marketing, an intrinsic part of that, of engaging potential clients and getting business online, is content. You need content, and you likely need a lot of it. And if you haven't been to our website, we do have a number of free webinars that carefully detail what you need to do in order to plan your content, to blog, to write for the web, so feel free to check those out. But the point here is that you need content, and so you're going to have to make some decisions about how to do that. The first is, if you want to write content yourself, that's great. And at Lawlytics, we can show you how to write it the right way, in a way that attracts your potential clients. So if you want to write your content, that's fantastic. Now, if you're not going to write it, that puts you in one of two positions. Either you delegate it to someone else, and you've got to delegate it the right way to someone who understands what you do as a criminal defense attorney. If you do that, you'll be in good shape. The alternative is that you don't delegate, and the longer you wait to start writing content, the longer you wait to engage your potential clients who are looking for you online, the more time you're wasting and the more opportunities that you're missing for your firm. And your competitors will be getting ahead writing the content that you aren't. So we see it as axiomatic that you need content, it just comes down to deciding who is going to write it. In the content that you'll write, an underlying goal should be to compel your potential clients to reach out to you. And the way to do that isn't simply to say, call my criminal defense firm now, but it's to connect to them through your writing. Your content should inspire confidence in them that you know what you're talking about and that you're the right criminal defense attorney to assist them in their problem, that they can trust you. After all, a lot of the things that criminal defense attorneys handle can be embarrassing and frightening experiences for the person who's going through them, and your potential client needs to know that if they choose you, they can really trust you to work and fight for the best possible outcome. What you're also trying to do is to convey sameness. Your potential clients aren't just looking for an attorney. They need a human who also practices the law and really understands their problem and gets where they're coming from and has empathy for their situation. So here's what your content should do. It should show your potential clients that you know what you're talking about, so to establish subject matter expertise. And you can do that in both your website's substantive content as well as blog posts, and we'll talk about that more in just a minute. But make sure that you do it in a way that a layperson can understand. Keep in mind that your potential clients may not come from a legal background, and you're familiar with the terms of art, they may not be. So legalese can be confusing and it can be frustrating and off-putting. Show them that you're passionate and interested in them and their problems. So part of that is publishing new content on a regular basis. Nothing says I'm not interested in what I do like an abandoned blog or a website that doesn't have new content that's published on a regular basis. And they also need to know that you understand their problem and that the problem that they're facing is complex, but it's one that you are uniquely suited to help them solve. Content can show up in a lot of different forms, and these are the basic structural elements that you'll feature on your website. The text is, of course, the most basic part of your website, and before you start delving into the bells and whistles like video or audio, it's important to have a strong, well-established foundation of text content. Once that's established, you can start thinking about enhancements like infographics or video or podcasts, which do add to your web presence and can be helpful educational tools for your potential clients, but that written content foundation has got to come first. There are three basic kinds of content. There's blog content, there's substantive content, which is also sometimes referred to as evergreen content, and there's also reputational content. And each of these are different from each other and they serve different purposes, so we're going to discuss why that is and why you need to develop each of these. So let's go ahead and start with blog content. So, substantive content is the meat of your website. As I said, sometimes also referred to as evergreen content because it's the content that will remain consistent and consistently relevant for your readership for a long time. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. First, let's talk about blogging. So, whether the idea of blogging for your law firm is completely new to you or you know that you need to and you just haven't gotten around to it yet, blogging is one of the most efficient and one of the most effective ways to market your law firm for a number of reasons. A blog for your criminal defense firm helps your firm stay relevant. Many potential clients use the web to find their attorney, and a lack of participation online can raise red flags for potential clients. They expect to find you online. They expect to find that you're participating in the online discussion. So by blogging on a regular basis, that allows you to consistently connect with potential clients while creating discourse about a variety of topics. It helps to answer the questions that your potential clients have, and it really helps to build that bond of trust. If you are an attorney who is worried about web traffic, about rankings, and about SEO, you are not alone. A lot of attorneys are. One question that we often get here at Lawlytics is from those attorneys who ask us, My SEO strategy doesn't seem to be working. How can I improve my traffic and rankings? And a follow-up question that we often ask is, how often are you blogging? When SEO strategy isn't working, what it can often be attributed to is a lack of blogging, whether that's infrequent blogging or no blogging at all. So by writing blogs on a regular basis, you can improve your traffic. The more quality content that you write, the more opportunities that Googlebot see to come back to your website and index that new material for the relevant questions that your potential clients are asking. Those bots are always looking for new material. Blogging also makes you and your criminal defense firm unique. It helps to build relationships with potential clients. It sets you apart from lawyers who aren't blogging at all. But above all that, it's a place to show your potential clients that you care about the questions that they're asking, that you're devoting individual blog posts to answering those questions. It gives you a space to give your opinion, to make commentary, and to keep people returning to your website. Here's another thing that attorneys will want to consider about blogging. With an increasing number of small firms being eaten up by larger firms, you're going to want a way to make sure that your presence is unique and it's priceless, even in the face of a merger. And that's where thought leadership comes in. Blogging isn't just an appreciating asset for your criminal defense firm. It's an asset for you personally. If it comes time to trim the fat when a merger happens, a larger firm may not cut an individual who has amassed a large following with a blog. Blogs really establish you as a thought leader, someone who's an authority in their field, who's uniquely influential. Because blogs are highly effective in connecting with potential clients and turning them into your clients, a blog can be a major asset for your law firm, as well as for you and your financial security and for your future. So now that you know a little bit more about blogging, keep in mind that at the Lawlytics website we have a lot of free resources for you to look at if you need blog topic inspiration or you're ready to start thinking about content planning. And we'll revisit blogging a little bit later as well. Okay, substantive content, the meat of your website. Here are some areas that constitute substantive pages, and they can really be divided into one of two categories. The first is the pages that are about you, so the about your firm page, your attorney bios, or bios if you have more than one attorney, your office location or locations, recommendations from happy former clients, and other things like case results that demonstrate your capability. The second category is the pages that are about your potential clients and about the problem or case that they're facing. And this includes practice area pages, the pages that detail important aspects about the law and the place where you live, local pages that help you strategically target your specific local audience, frequently asked questions pages, and those help with things like client expectation management and case studies as well. Let's start with this topic, so about your firm. A lot of times we see about your firm pages that are very conservative and maybe they're just a series of facts about the firm. But that's not very engaging. Think about how on your firm's page, and that's aside from the individual bio pages, how are you going to refer to yourself? Are you going to talk about yourself in the first person? Are you going to choose the third person? And there are benefits and drawbacks to each. I actually wrote a blog post about this in mid-November about when you may want to choose first, second, or third person, so feel free to check that out over at the Lawlytics blog if you need some help deciding or you're just sort of curious about the various considerations. But as you're writing this page, ask yourself if this really sets you apart from other criminal defense attorneys and other criminal defense firms. What makes your firm unique? What's your unique selling proposition or your USP? Does it get to the heart of who you are and let your audience get to know you? And that takes us to a related page, which is your attorney bio. So this is one of the most visited and the most important pages on your site. And it can really be a powerful business generator, but only when it's written the right way. And that requires some thought. So one thing that often happens with attorney bios is that attorneys are tempted to rattle off long lists of facts about their educational history, their accolades, their awards, and so forth. And there's a place for that, and there's a way to do that. But the trick with attorney bios is not to talk about your accomplishments in the way that you might to another attorney, but to think about this in the context of what it means to your potential client. So let's take a look at what your potential clients care about. It's important to understand how your potential clients and referral sources approach the information that they're consuming about you. So before your potential clients or referral sources consider your accomplishments, they want to know about you as a person. There's that saying that people won't care about what you know until they know how much you care, and that's very fitting here. So aside from knowing how much you care about what you do, your potential clients also want to know how enthusiastic you are, how intense is your interest in your practice, in them, in their problem. So once they know that you care about them and you care about what you do, then they want to know about what you've done. So here's a way to think about this. First, write about your journey to the law. You need to show your potential clients that you care about them, that you care about their case and your practice. So consider answering some of the following questions. How did you get to where you are right now? Why is it that you chose to handle the cases that you do? The types of cases that your potential client is wondering if you can help them with. What inspired you to become a lawyer? What inspired your career path? What happened to you during your formative years that made you decide that you wanted to practice law? What motivates you as an attorney and as a person? And the deeper that you can dig for things that motivate you outside of just winning or making money, the more you can make it about your potential client and about your success being dependent on the valuable benefit that you provide to your clients, the more relatable you make yourself to them. And it's not just about getting a case dismissed or what have you. It's about things like getting a client through a difficult situation with peace of mind, or getting them into a place where they feel like they have some positive energy. Ask yourself what drives you to do it and what inspires you. Who do you surround yourself with? So potential clients want to know who you surround yourself with, and not just in the law, though that's important too, but also in your own life. What kinds of extracurricular activities are you a part of? Do you support some kind of youth group? Are you a member of charities? How do you give back to the community? What helps you define yourself outside of the law? People often read more into who you are based on the company that you keep more than any other things you say on your bio. Other questions. Who have you helped? So Lawlytics provides a special module for doing your attorney bios and a separate special module for case results, things that you've done within the law to help people. But we also provide a separate module for recommendations from clients and from your peers. It's not really what we're talking about here. Your attorney bio isn't a place for discussing individual cases, but instead to discuss cases more generally. So whether people come to you because they were arrested or whatever the case may be, think about the type of person that you typically help. You want to paint a picture of who you've helped and why you enjoy doing that. What have you done? So talk about what you've accomplished in your law career and your education. What qualifies you? So this can be honors, case results, publications, but the problem here is that attorneys tend to just list these things. So instead of just listing them, talk about what it means to you. So take a publication, for example. Talk about what that means to you to have been selected, how the selection process worked, why it's a big deal. Give it some context. So, for example here, maybe you've been selected as a top criminal defense lawyer in your area by a local magazine. What went into that? What was the criteria? How did they define it? What does it mean to you? Remember here that what may be obvious to you is not necessarily obvious to your potential client, especially if they don't come from a legal background. The reality is that many potential clients don't necessarily understand what the various terms of art attorneys use to compare themselves to one another. So if you're AV rated, it's good to explain what that means. If you have a perfect score of 10 on AVA, what does it mean? What have you done to earn it? How many clients have you helped? What do you typically do during the process? And this, of course, is not an exhaustive list, but the more of these things that you write about in your attorney bio, the more ideas you'll have for other things to talk about in the future, too. Okay, office locations pages. So an office location page sounds simple, and they can be, but they can also be much more than just an address and a phone number. Your potential clients need to know your address and your phone number, obviously, but give them some extra information that they need. They need maps. They need to know if you have multiple locations. Maybe you have different attorneys at each location. They need to know that too. They need to know who to expect when they go to a location. Then you can consider adding relevant facts. How do you get to your office? Do they need their parking validated? Are there certain visual landmarks they should be looking for? Is your office hard to find? Is it on like a small side street? Be sure to add pictures too. It makes things much more comfortable for your potential clients. So as you create this content, you make an impression on your potential client that you care about making it as easy as possible for them to find you and to get what they need. Recommendations. So recommendations are important points of proof, and there's no better way to prove to your potential clients and to your referral sources that you can do a good job than by having other people say that you've done a good job. And you'll want to write a good lead into your recommendations page, but you can also add something to each recommendation that makes it more than just somebody saying that you did a great job. You'll want to add some context to those recommendations. As an example, let's say that somebody writes a nice recommendation about you, but it's pretty non-specific. Maybe they say, this attorney or this criminal defense firm did a great job for me and kept me out of jail, thank you so much. Add additional details to that explain the context and that give more substance to that very non-specific recommendation, which gives it more weight and helps to make more sense to the potential client who's reading it. An important aspect of writing better case results is understanding what they're meant to do, not just what they're supposed to contain. So by knowing what purpose your case results serve, you can write these really compelling stories that humanize you and that drive potential clients to reach out to you. Your case results should inspire confidence and engender trust and convey sameness between you and your potential client. Your potential clients read case results with themselves in mind. They will put themselves into the shoes of the clients that are the subjects of your results. And that is why, more than simply just listing an outcome, it's important to explain why you fought so hard and why it matters in the context of the client that you helped. So let's look at an example of how to tell a compelling story. Okay, so here's an example. This one is not criminal defense specific. This would be more for like a personal injury attorney, but it's going to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So let's start with the facts. Let's say you're a personal injury attorney here, that you have a client who's in a car accident. Give your readers the setup. Maybe your client was driving down the interstate when suddenly this terrible accident happens. Describe your client's frustrations with the insurance company, with medical bills. Make the situation that your client was facing real and relatable to the person who's reading the story. What was at stake? Why is it that as an attorney you felt the need to take his or her case and to put your energy into the case? Are you fighting for her? Are you fighting for justice? Are you fighting for both? What are the motivations of your potential client? What are your motivations? Where do those motivations intersect? Your potential clients want to know that your motivations are in alignment with theirs. It's sort of the how much do you care part of the pyramid. Next we have the challenges. So this is where the enthusiasm comes in. What were the odds and what were the obstacles that you faced in this case? How did you prepare for it? And this is a matter of not only saying what you did, but how you got there. So by only talking about the conclusion, your potential clients may not understand how much work went into the final result. And as you're talking about how you prepared, talk about why you cared about the case so much, that it becomes clear to your reader that you also care about their case. Next up is the quest. So the details matter. And that's regardless of what kind of criminal defense case you're working on. The details go a very long way toward convincing potential clients that you're the right person for the job. Now, you don't necessarily want to put your attorney bio here, but you can connect your client's story to your bio in a way that ties things together nicely without restating it. You may want to include a link to your attorney bio here as well. And lastly, the results. So this is often where most attorneys start when they talk about success stories, but without understanding the facts and the challenges and the journey that you took to get the result, potential clients may not understand this part without some context. So once you've built up those other elements, talk about your results. And don't just talk about the legal result, whether it's, getting the dismissal or what have you. Talk about how the result impacted your client's life. So as an example, maybe you won a trial that allowed your client to keep their license, and being able to keep his or her license allowed them to keep their job, and that job allowed them to send their child to college. So the deeper that you go, the more relatable it is to your potential clients, the better. But the end result doesn't just benefit your potential client. So after you talk about the general results, talk about how it better armed you to serve your clients in the future. How did this case continue to prepare you for the next potential client's case? Your previous successes as an attorney are important points of social proof that can really inspire your potential clients to have confidence in your work, to engage you and to ultimately hire you. And case results, when they're written correctly, can be even more valuable than recommendations from your former clients and from other lawyers. But as I said, unfortunately, attorneys often list case results on their law firm websites as these 1- or 2-line summaries that may not mean much to your potential clients and don't necessarily encourage them to reach out to you. But if you write your case results in the right way, they can really become these powerful stories that speak to your potential clients and inspire them to seek your assistance. And what we see on most law firm websites is a single-page list. A lot of results, not a lot of detail. So victories, not guilty verdicts. These things don't mean a whole lot to potential clients out of context. So when you're writing your results, think about writing compelling stories that encourage your potential clients to reach out to you. Okay, practice area pages. So this is an area in which Rachel's going to discuss in a little bit more detail, but this is where most attorney websites really begin. But we recommend going a lot deeper than just the practice area pages. So for your practice area, you want to describe it in terms that a layperson can understand. Then you want to give a simple overview of each area, and then you can drill down into specifics. That gives your potential clients a choice as to how they want to consume that content. Do they want a basic overview of something? Or maybe they want to know something very specific about the problem that they're facing. And that leads us to detailed law pages. So this is where you're drilling down into the detailed pages. This is where you can spend a lot of time and a lot of words getting more and more specific. Some attorneys get discouraged by the idea that a potential client is only going to read a portion of what you write. Don't get discouraged by that. You want to give them as many choices as to how they want to consume that content. So if they read a basic overview and they're satisfied with what they find there, their exit is to call you. Or maybe they keep drilling down and down into the content until they've read everything there is to read. And at that point, they decide that you're the right attorney for them. But it's important to give them that choice and to build up a really robust collection of information. And don't think that any question or any topic isn't right for your website. If one client has asked about something in the past, many more may be curious about the same thing, and they need someone who can answer that question for them. Local pages. So one of the best things that attorneys can do to address people in local markets is to create pages that they can relate to. And the further you're able to hone in on local information, the more relevant it is for those potential clients and cases that are local in nature. And with Lawlytics, you can easily put in pictures and maps and so forth, so you can easily create these pages. The mechanics of this are a little bit beyond this webinar, but we do have a specific local pages webinar that you can check out on our website. But when you create these pages and you create silos of local pages, think about what happens in the various places where you live. And Rachel's going to talk about this a little more shortly. But if you want to provide your potential clients, or rather, you want to provide your potential clients with as much information as is useful to them. So, for example, what can you tell your potential clients about courts, police stations, jails, checkpoints, road or crime areas? Your competitors may not be taking the time to do this, and this kind of technique can really help you outperform them. Questions and answer pages. So every page on your website should really address the questions that your potential client has, but FAQ pages are special in that they can do a number of different things on one page, so don't overlook the value in this kind of page. If you're sitting across the table from one of your potential clients, you know that you learn a lot about the questions that they have, their goals, their concerns, their fears. These are the same kinds of things that can go on an FAQ page. And again, like I talked about earlier, people generally don't go to a search engine and type in Criminal Defense Attorney Florida. They'll ask questions about what they should do after they've been arrested for possession in your city or state, or they'll ask about what their rights are at a traffic stop, or any number of complex questions that you can answer on your site. And not only can a good FAQ page help your visibility, but a good page can also answer several questions at once. So you can devote an entire page or post to one problem, and then you can link those pages within your frequently asked questions page. But you can also provide other answers and other questions that may be of interest to your potential clients. Another good thing that a good frequently asked questions page can do is helping to manage client expectations. A good FAQ page can help increase productivity at your law firm. So when clients have questions, a good FAQ page can act as a resource for them. But a good questions and answers page can also assist with client expectations. It can help prevent surprises. So a page like this can address frequent questions about timelines or fees or even what's expected during an office visit. And that sort of transparency can help to manage expectations. When client expectations don't align with your services, that's when a lot of problems can arise. So a criminal defense attorney may find a potential client who has expectations about a certain outcome because of some perception they have about how the process works. And a good questions page can address smaller issues as well, such as how quickly your firm returns phone calls or emails. And above all, a page like this can help counter issues with potential clients whose expectations may be unrealistic. And every client expectation is really an opportunity for you to build a great frequently asked questions resource for your law firm. Addressing perceptions and questions early on can both comfort and educate your potential clients, and it can align expectations and inspire potential clients in terms of having a resource that can increase law firm productivity and business. Okay, case studies pages. It's important from the perspective of your potential client not only to understand that you know what their problem is or how to solve it, but that you've done things that are relevant to their case in the past, or at least that you understand it. Most potential new clients won't understand nuance and legalese, but they do respond well to detailed fact patterns. So one thing you can do is take published cases or lower court opinions that aren't necessarily published but that are accessible, and then take those fact patterns from the opinions and lay them out in the individual pages and answer the questions about why this happened, the procedure. You can even make up hypothetical fact patterns and talk about how the law works in regard to those. your potential clients will look through those fact patterns to find things that they relate to or that they resonate with. And this is an exercise that that takes a lot of time and effort, but it's well worth it, not only for your potential clients, but for the search engines that are looking for this kind of relevant material to provide to potential clients who ask questions about it. So we've talked about substantive or evergreen pages. We've talked about blog posts. We've talked about reputational content like your about pages, but there is one more page I want to briefly touch upon, and that is a landing page. So landing pages are designed to bring in targeted traffic with a specific goal. So whether that is to contact your firm, to request a download like an ebook, to get on your mailing list, whatever that is, this page is for that specific goal. It's designed to convert the visitor into completing whatever the user action is. Now, the benefit of building specific landing pages, which you can do in Lawlytics, is this. You convert at higher percentages, and that's because instead of casting a wide net with traditional forms of advertising, where you hope to attract potential clients and hope to attract those that are a good fit for your firm, landing pages help you narrow that scope a little bit in a way that benefits your potential client. They find exactly the sort of information that they're looking for, and it benefits your criminal defense firm in that you begin to build that bond of trust with them and start building that relationship before you've ever met face-to-face. Landing pages also help to remove distractions, and this is really important. Now, you can have a call to action on a regular page, and that's great, but if you want to drive traffic specifically to your site to take a specific action, the best thing to do is to remove distractions, and landing pages really help to accomplish that. You also want to give your potential client specific, clear instructions, and landing pages for one specific task can do that quite well. And the overall effect of this is that you can really drive down the cost of your advertising by being strategic with these landing pages. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel so she can tell you a little bit more about the specifics of content. Rachel, good morning.
Thank you, Tori. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you all are. As Dan mentioned earlier, prior to joining Lawlytics, I practiced criminal defense in Pennsylvania, and now I oversee the Lawlytics content department. We work with our attorney clients to plan, create, and refine their web content. Now, one of the most helpful things you can do before creating content for a new site is to take some time and really think about the audience for whom you will be writing. Who are you attempting to target? What are the general demographic characteristics of your audience? Do you practice in a small college town with high rates of underage drinking and drug possession charges? Will you be practicing in a large urban area where the majority of your clients will be non-native English speakers? What will be the mindset of a visitor who's coming to your site? A person who's using a mobile device searching for an attorney immediately after being arrested will be processing information in a much different manner than, for example, a desktop user who has decided to plan their estate and is looking for an attorney to help them create a will. What is your local language? How do people speak? How do they commonly refer to locations? For example, if you were searching for a dentist, would you search by the city name, the name of the county, name of the township? Are there slang or colloquial terms that your users might type in when seeking information? Taking these steps early on in the process can be incredibly helpful to drill down on the audience you are seeking to serve, and it will help you much more than any type of vague article that just addresses writing for the web or SEO topics. An unnecessary stumbling block for a new criminal defense website can often be volume of content. However, it's really important to stress that you do not need to invest a significant amount of resources into creating content that is necessary to get your site off the ground and launched. When we're working with clients who are launching a new site, we focus on creating what we call the structural content, which includes the home page, the attorney's bio, the About Our Firm pages, all of which Victoria spoke about earlier. Additionally, we also include a few substantive pages that focus on practice area. Generally, we plan for these pages to be a broad overview of particular topics or cases. We recommend that before you launch, you cover each type of case that you handle on your website. This can be done in a variety of ways, depending on how much time you have available. If you're able to, it's an excellent idea to create a distinct page for each type of charge that you might handle for a client. So you might have a page on aggravated assault, a page on assault with a deadly weapon, and so on. When you're just starting out, we recommend these pages be around 500 words on the shorter side. When covering a crime such as this, you will want to clearly define for the reader what the statute is, including the statutory language, which is broken down into layman's terms, and what penalties a person might face if convicted. However, we sometimes see attorneys who don't have the time or the resources to create separate pages for each type of crime that the firm handles right up out of the gate. This should in no way inhibit the launch of your site. What we recommend to do in this instance is to create cluster pages, such as what is shown in the menu here. Rather than a separate page for sexual assault, indecent exposure, and so forth, there's a cluster page titled Sex Crimes. This page will briefly mention the types of charges a person might face, including a truncated definition and possible penalties. As Victoria mentioned earlier, we also strongly recommend including an FAQ page in your initial content build. This page can serve a multitude of purposes, including giving your site a boost with the search engines and helping you to set a roadmap for where you want to go as you're growing your web presence. Even if you're very new to criminal defense or the site is very new, you should be thinking long term. When deciding which pages you'd initially like to add to your site, think of how you will eventually want to grow your site and flesh those pages out. The reason why we start a new site with legal practice area pages that serve as a broad overview is as the website grows, we can easily add subpages that go into much greater detail. For example, to launch a site, we might initially include a page titled Drug Crimes, which briefly covers a variety of different drug charges. On this page, possession of a controlled substance, possession with intent, cultivating marijuana, and drug paraphernalia would be subheadings at the time of launch. However, as the site grows, you can use this page as a map for how you want to build out this section of your site, and then create much longer, much more in-depth pages that address each type of charge. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, starting with an FAQ page is also an excellent way to set a roadmap for future site growth. So if you don't have the time to create these individual pages, again, don't let that be anything that's holding you back, because sometimes it's better to create a cluster page that is more general, because then you can use that as a parent page. And this example on my slide here, Drug Crimes, it will be start out as a standalone page. But then we can easily turn that into a parent page that will still have the same content. You won't need to go back and change that. It will still briefly go over the charges that you'll later be writing full, really fleshed out pages for. And what you can also do when you set things up like that is you can have internal links to those pages coming from your initial overview page, which helps boost your site as well, having extra internal links. And if you're creating your site on another platform, it might be a good idea early on in the process to discuss with your web developer how you will eventually need to evolve your site architecture to accommodate subpages, because certain things might need to be built into the menu structure early on, or they might need to have an idea of what you want to add at the beginning. However, one of the things I love, my team works with attorneys who are on the Lawlytics platform and who are on other platforms, and what we love the most about the Lawlytics platform is that you can easily add subpages to a practice area page. You don't need to plan ahead. You can change them if you want to very easily, and any changes you make will automatically populate in your navigational menus too. So if something changes in a statute of limitations or in a penalty, you can always go back and easily make changes and move those pages around. And so when you're early on and you're thinking about eventually growing, it's just it's really easy to use and easy to grow with. And I mentioned this earlier, but again, the one thing I do want to caution against if you're finding yourself ready to launch a new site and you don't have the time to create these pages, instead of doing the cluster technique that I spoke about, sometimes we see attorneys who try to create a great deal of pages, so they have a high volume of pages on their site, but these pages don't contain helpful information because they don't really have the time. And what I mean by this is, having a page that's something titled like assault charges in Atlanta. And it only says something like assault charges in Atlanta can carry very serious consequences. We have years of experience defending against assault charges. Contact us today. This probably doesn't provide the information that a user who typed assault charge in Atlanta would want to obtain. And it doesn't properly address that hierarchy of needs that Victoria spoke about earlier. So we've worked with a great deal of criminal defense firms when they're starting to launch their site. And I wanted to take the time now to examine some common mistakes that we have encountered when people are in that position. As I mentioned earlier, we sometimes see law firms who think they need to have a site that has a really, really high volume of content in order just to go live. They think that they should hold off until they might look at another successful firm in their area and say, wow, this site is so big, I should really wait. But this isn't something we encourage at all. While adding quality content on a consistent basis is going to be crucial to having a successful site, you should not allow some arbitrary notion of how big your site needs to be hold you up from pushing your site live. The necessary structural content, in addition to the practice area pages, having those set up before you go will provide sufficient information about the types of cases your firm handles, and that's adequate just for a site launch. Keep in mind, this is just the beginning. You'll be continuing to grow and refine your website content as time goes on. The second thing we see sometimes is failing to incorporate those guiding audience principles. And what I mean by that is we sometimes work with attorneys who really have their audience nailed down. For example, they work in a small town and they know that the prevailing attitude towards lawyers is maybe less than warm, and they really want to come across as someone you grab a beer with after work. However, this gets lost when creating content for their site, and the focus can shift back to legalese or stiff formal language. For example, an About Our Firm page may read something like, Mr. Faraday has years of experience representing individuals charged with criminal offenses in Pendleton County, West Virginia, rather than something like, Matt was born and raised right here in Seneca Rocks. After graduating from WVU, he came back to fight for the rights of his friends and his neighbors who've been unjustly charged with crimes. And next, this may sound a little odd, but we sometimes work with attorneys who want to include practice area pages on cases they don't actually handle or don't handle yet, and they'll let that hold up the launch process. We've seen some firms who think that they should include a page on white-collar crimes, homicide, or sex crimes, even though those aren't cases that the firm handles or the firm will handle in the future, but they don't at this point. And they might think that having these pages in their site sort of lends an aura of expertise. Or sometimes, like I said, they're bringing an associate on in a few months who will specialize in this type of case, but they don't yet. So if you find yourself in that situation, this just really isn't something that you should spend that much time and energy focusing on when you're doing your initial content build. If you do want to expand into a new area, that's great, but don't spend any unnecessary effort early on, especially when you're in this kind of start phase, to writing content for these types of cases. even if you think they'll lend a certain something to the site. That can be something that you do focus on later on after you've launched. But again, in this early phase, you just want to get it out there, and it's an asset, and you want to focus on what's going to bring you the best ROI, especially early on. And when you do organic, when you focus on organic marketing, when you focus on writing that content, your website is an asset, and that asset is going to appreciate over time. But that process doesn't start until you get going and you get launched. And again, I know that this is something Victoria spoke at length about, but we just can't say it enough. We oftentimes see attorneys who are just launching their site, who are focused not on really creating content, but the SEO tricks and techniques that they should know now or that they should know in the future. And I really feel that this bears repeating. And it's most critical when you're in that, when you're getting started and when you're trying to build your site. Please don't waste time on any type of, outdated or ineffective SEO techniques. When you're at this phase, the focus just needs to be on writing that content, creating that content and letting that appreciate over time, rather than, some trick or some shortcut, or even if it's something that you might see someone else using. Keep in mind that those types of when you see that type of success, that's something that someone is paying money for right now, constantly, all the time, every day, today, tomorrow. When you're writing content, that's one-time effort that you put into creating, and then it's going to sit on your site, and it's just going to appreciate over time. It's not something that you have to continually waste resources on. And then the last thing we see sometimes is inadvertent mistakes made. And this happens quite a bit when writing on criminal defense topics, because a lot of times large firms might sponsor a site that has nothing but statutes for a particular state. We also see sometimes there are sites that are kind of lawyer directories, and they also have sites that are just dedicated to criminal statutes. So it might be easy to see that, the particular site that's nothing but statutes is obviously created by another attorney or another firm. But sometimes it's not so hard, or I'm sorry, it's not so easy. There might be, it might have an innocuous sounding URL, such as Rhode Island DUI law, but there might be, a small contact button, or even just something that says Ask a Lawyer feature. And what that does is that's going to, obviously that's going to either a particular firm who's created the page or a pool of attorneys. So sometimes we see statutes cited to a page like that, and so what you're doing is you're taking, if a user were to check that law that you're citing to on your site, you're taking the user off your site and taking them somewhere else where they will be exposed to your competitors. So that's why we always recommend sticking to government resource pages, such as the state legislature page or the state DMV page, when you're writing a particular practice area page. So the start phase is really exciting because you're taking the first step in embarking on creating a strong online presence. And when you're launching a site or opening a new firm or offering services in a new practice areas, one of the best things you can do is track as much data as you possibly can, because this really empowers you to learn more about your local clientele. You might not be getting a great deal of web traffic with a newly launched site, but there are many other data sets for you to track. So you can start, right after that, you can see what type of cases is your firm attracting. For example, if you practice in a college town and you're seeing a great deal of underage DUI cases, that might be something you would want to focus on, early on as you're growing your firm. So it's also a good idea to keep an eye on larger trends in your area. For example, if local law enforcement has announced a new initiative that they're going to start in the new year, cracking down on local warehouse raves or something like that, you might see an increase in drug possession charges. And that might be a great idea to, when you're planning content, where am I going to start? What areas should I focus blogging or writing my substantive pages on? If that's something you know is going to happen, maybe that can help guide you. I might want to have a page specifically on ecstasy or MDMA cases. because I think possession charges are going to spike once that, once they start cracking down on the parties that they've been having downtown or something like that. Or if marijuana has recently become or is about to become legal for recreational purposes in your state, you might be seeing a lot more DUI cases under the influence of marijuana. And you can also gather what local information might be important for creating local pages. Please never underestimate the value of things like a page on if you're being arraigned where in the local courthouse where you can find parking, or the days that there's jury selection and it will be difficult to find parking. That type of information is really critical, and it's a sort of innovative way for you to capture users who are looking for things rather than just that legal representation. They're looking for a piece of ancillary information that someone who's in your town charged with a crime might need to know, but it can be a great way to pull people onto your site. And finally, one of the most important areas you can keep tabs on is the questions that you and your staff are being asked. If you have partners, associates, and/or support staff, you might want to consider creating a shared document to which everyone can contribute. Because these questions are they're the most important things to address on your site, especially for FAQ pages and for inspiration to add future pages to your site. You can see, what is the information we're being asked on a continual basis. And it also can give your support staff additional tools, instead of having to answer the same question over and over again. We've had clients who create sort of a welcome informational email that they can send to clients who are being charged with a certain crime, and that includes links to the FAQ page for that particular crime, and that answers a lot of questions that they get routinely. So it kind of helps add to the knowledge base of your firm and gives your clients additional resources and can cut down on the job that your support staff has to do in that initial sort of education period. If you have more specific questions regarding the content for your site, I really, really encourage you to just shoot us an email. We can be reached at writing@lawalytics.com, or you can give us a call. Some of you might already be familiar with her, but Alyssa Rhodes is the director of our content services, and over the past couple of years has helped many attorneys create content and launch their sites. So if you have a brief question, or you want some help getting started, additional resources, or assistance kind of planning for that long term, we're more than happy to help. And then I just wanted to let you know, if you're interested, the next webinar in our practice area series will be Growing Your Criminal Defense Practice, and that airs on February 9th, and then will then be available on demand following that. And in this webinar, we will discuss additional tools you can use for long-term content strategy and planning, how you can flesh out those initial practice area pages, lessons learned from successful growing criminal defense firms, and as well as some common pitfalls to avoid. And I'm now going to turn the mic back over to Victoria. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel. So now that you understand how content works, there are a couple considerations you're going to have to make. And the first is how often? How often will you be updating your evergreen content to include new pages? How often will you be publishing to your blog? And keep in mind that, as I discussed previously, for blogging to benefit your firm, you're going to have to do it consistently. So once a year or once a month isn't going to cut it. Some recent data from HubSpot suggests that businesses who post more than 16 blogs in a month receive 3.5 times more traffic than those who published only up to 4 times a month. And it's reasonable to believe that that trend translates for criminal defense attorneys as well. And anecdotally speaking, we see that criminal defense attorneys who blog more often get more traffic. The second thing you'll have to consider is what topics you'll write about, and the best way to do this really is to have a content plan. As a reminder, we do have some nice content planning resources over on our website. They're free and on demand, so go check them out. The last question is knowing who is going to write that content. Is it going to be you, or is it going to be a proxy writer? And either way, like I said before, you're going to need content. The very last thing to remember here is that if you're writing your own content, perfect is really the enemy of good, or as Ali Sachs over at Iris PR said, it's not a brief, it's a blog. Don't let perfectionism get in the way of your publishing. And with that, let's move from the topic of content to the topic of website design, which is another important part of your web presence. I'm going to turn the mic over to Sophia Oluboni, who is our senior web designer. Sophia, good morning.
Good morning, Tori. How are you this morning?
Great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. So what I would like to do is kind of touch upon the things that are important as far as web design goes for a law firm, and just things to keep in mind as you start to learn about what is best and how your site should look and function. So to start off with, your web design is not for you, it is for your potential client. And you have to keep that in mind. Design that fails to communicate is dead. That is the purpose of design, is to communicate. Interactive media adds a new element to that communication because it's meant to be interacted with. It's not a poster, it's not a newspaper. However, the internet is a relatively new form of media, and problems with usability crop up when people think about the web in the same way that they long thought about print media. Attorneys may say that they want something above the fold, as they might with a newspaper, or they might point out something on the top of the screen. The problem with that is web design doesn't work in terms of print rules. What is above the fold or above the screen will be based on what screen size or device the user is viewing the site upon. But it's hard, but that becomes hard because most of us have grown up on newspapers, and when we make that transition into new media, we have a hard time of letting go of those concepts. Another thing to just consider when designing for your clients and not for yourself is if your demographic is mostly an older demographic, you might want to consider the different colors. Maybe your favorite color is a neon green, but that may not be the best color to put on your site for your audience to view. As we move on, we are going to talk about aesthetics in websites. The average user spends about 30 seconds on a site before they move on. That's half of a minute. So it is very important to have something that's visually pleasing to grab their attention. Aesthetics is known as the set of principles guiding the work of an artist, and that includes color, contrast, graphics, and layout. A website's aesthetics can influence a brand's credibility and perception. In fact, studies have shown a clear link between solid design and site credibility. Aesthetics really do have a function. Pleasant visual designs make your potential clients feel more relaxed. As a result, they tend to find a well-designed website more credible and easier to use. It's easier on the eye, and therefore they consider it to be more user-friendly. But you also have to have something that keeps their attention. How you keep it is by having good content that answers a potential client's questions about their case or their problem that's presented in a readable format. And what I mean by readable is the term that we use, which is readability. And that is about featuring your content in chunks with headlines and bullet points, the occasional bold, having something that can easily be scanned for titles and information without having to read everything that is on the page. Having content there is very important. You have to have beautiful, but having a very beautiful but empty website is basically useless. Now, out of the examples that I put on the slide, if you look on the example to the left, that would be an example of what would be considered a very beautiful website, but that is not very user-friendly, and so it's practically useless. You take up the entire screen with big blocks of content and colors, and there's like icons everywhere, it is hard for the users to tell hierarchy, to tell what's more important, to tell where their eyes should rest first, and some users might be confused about whether they should scroll down, whether they should click on everything. So that is a very beautiful site, but it is not user-friendly and your users will bounce. And for the example on the right, that is a good example of chunking, and so, or readability. And that is having clear and short titles that are, and then it kind of shows hierarchy from bold to slightly bigger and then into the body font so that you can tell which direction you should be reading and what is more important on the page. Now we're going to talk about usability. Usability is the measure of the quality of the user experience when a person interacts with your site. So on the web, usability is critical. It's been described as a necessary condition for survival. If your firm's website is difficult to use, potential clients will leave. If your homepage isn't clear about what you do, people will leave. If it's hard to read or it doesn't answer your clients' questions, they will leave. The first reaction that people have with a site that they can't understand or they can't quickly find things upon is to leave. A usable site should be quick and easy to learn from. It should be efficient to use. It should be easy to remember. The content needs to be navigable and readable. Four main characteristics that make up a usable site are quick and easy to learn, efficient to use, rapid recovery from 404s or rapid recovery from errors, and something that is easy to remember. Some lawyers just want all of the bells and whistles. They want a video background, slides with tons of movement, and other items that make their site heavy and slow. It makes it harder for your potential clients to read the content on your slides or to interact with it because it's slow and it's a waste of effort. They're going to bounce. You have to know when too much is too much and to scale back a little. Readability and usability are much more valuable than trying to have a fancy website. Studies have shown that websites' usability could influence the aesthetics. But we can talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. So I'm going to move on to what truly matters. Focusing on what matters, as for instance, what I have here is a series of shades of blue. The right shade of blue or the right font, focusing too much on minor details like this can get in the way of attorneys launching their site or focusing on the content. Focus on what's important. Spending a week or two of your time that could be pulling in clients, going back and forth over different colors or very similar fonts will not change the overall meaning or functionality of your site. And you're losing business while you're wasting time on that. At the end of the day, each color has a meaning. Blue means what blue means. The fact that you use a slightly lighter or a slightly darker shade does not remove the meaning of the color. The important thing is to get your site out there, to promote your firm, and to get business. Everything else is secondary. Some people argue that imagery is part of aesthetics, and while that is correct, if you're using stock imagery and you're worried about the difference between the image of, let's say, downtown LA or an LA freeway or a professional photo of your office or your law firm, they will each have the exact same impact as long as they are a high quality image. The difference between the subject matter will not change the impact on your clients. If you spend several weeks going back and forth on these three images, it won't have an impact on what your clients think about you. But what will have an impact is the time that you wasted on minor details. Now we're going to talk about the importance of white space. White space is by far the most overlooked and underutilized part of a good website layout. Attorneys sometimes perceive it as empty space or a waste of screen real estate, but it's incredibly important to your design and how your users are able to navigate through it. White space is the space between your columns, your text, and your images. It gives your potential clients' eyes some time to breathe. It makes people want to keep reading. When it's used well, it can really be transformative for your website. White space increases readability for your client. It actually helps people understand what they're reading, which adds up to better user experience overall. According to research by Human Factors International, white space increases readability comprehension by almost 20%. Next, I'm going to list you some of the other benefits of white space. One would be more interactions. Visitors are always in a hurry. Good white space prevents distractions that slow visitors down. It will get them to your call to action faster than bombarding them with a lot of different things to look at. The ability to highlight your call to actions. So a lot of attorneys think that making something bigger or bolder or just adding images to your buttons will draw people to it. But surrounding the item with white space will actually have a better result and is more effective. And then overall it makes your site more tidy and impressive. Basically, white space is essential because it indicates fineness and engineering. Yes, I apologize. It seems I lost connection for a minute there.
Yeah, I think we lost you about a minute and a half ago or so. So it might make sense to just double back and redo everything you were going to say about this slide, because it definitely happened when you started at some point during this slide.
All right, no problem. So basically, what I was talking about is how white space gives time to breathe and to better comprehend the content on your site. So a research was done that shows that white space increases comprehension by almost 20%. And it is a way to highlight your call to actions. So instead of making your button bigger or adding images to it, adding white space around it would actually be more effective. And it makes your site look more tidy and impressive, and it kind of gives it's an add of elegance, and it makes your site look more professional than if you were to bombard it with a lot of big bulky images or big bulky fonts or anything to that extent. Just adding white space makes it easier to navigate through and easier to understand. Then we're going to move on to Hick's Law, which is the concept of less is more. Hick's Law basically says that the more choices we have, the longer it takes us to make a decision. The fewer choices we have, the quicker our decision will be. Hick's Law can be applied to fine-tune your user experience. We can apply it to links, buttons, content, pages, navigation, images, and so much more. Building a great user experience can be achieved by slimming down the website, reducing your users' confusion, and increasing conversion rates of call to action elements. One way to achieve that is through progressive disclosure. By holding back some of the options until they are completely necessary, you will help the users maintain focus on the primary set of choices while reducing the clutter and the confusion. Also, think about white space again. If you make use of white space in your design, you can direct where your users look. And this way, you can reduce the options competing for their attention. You can have too much of a good thing, and you can easily confuse your users with too many choices. When working on visual design of your site, you should think about Hick's Law and take that into consideration and minimize your links, your options, thus streamlining the user's decision-making process. Another important thing to keep in mind is your website links. Having proper link titles is a major accessibility requirement for websites. Most sites use overly general links like click here, which says nothing about what is about to be found when you do. Link text should be clear and it should make sense out of context. I found that instead of using non-informative phrases such as click here, read more, link to, or info, or verbs in general, it's sometimes better to make proper and concrete nouns in a sentence a link. Nouns can help the users quickly grasp what they're clicking without having to read the entire sentence or phrase, whereas verbs are vague and they don't usually give a clear picture of what to expect. For example, as you can see on this slide, instead of writing view our firm's case results here, where here is the highlighted element, choosing something like view our case results, where the noun case results is the anchor text. Poor link text hurts usability. So let's say you have a user who's visually impaired in some way. Maybe they use a screen reader. If so, they would have a hard time understanding vague links without having the whole page read to them word for word. In the end, the wording on the link does make a difference to the users. It's important that we make our links visually distinct from the body text and specific to the page or the document that they link to. Next, we're going to discuss your firm's brand. Your brand is your promise to your customer. One thing I often see is that attorneys want a lot of text in their logos. However, attorneys don't realize that your logo shouldn't be a sentence or a phrase or a paragraph, but a simple visual representation that should be easy to recognize. A goal here is to reduce the amount of content you have in your logo. More text does not scale. It's hard to read. Think about it this way. If your current logo has a lot of text in it, ask yourself, could you read this if you were to put it on a pen? Could you read it quickly while you're passing a sign on the freeway? A good logo has to stand out on its own without a tagline. A tagline is something that you can highlight in other parts of your site, but it doesn't necessarily have to be attached to your logo. There are times when your tagline should be attached to your logo, but your logo has to be able to stand on its own. It's got to represent your company even when it scales. It has to look, you have to look to the future and create something that's sustainable, something that will work if you add more partners or if you grow your firm. Branding needs to be consistent across all media. That's because consistent branding puts your potential clients at ease. Your brand helps set you apart from your competition. Another thing that I see are that attorneys who love another attorney's website and they want theirs to look just like it. Don't try to be another attorney. And this is why. If your website looks just like another law firm on the web, those potential clients are going to have to use other factors to decide what they'll choose. Has the other firm been around longer than you? Are they better established than you? Do they have better reviews? If you haven't built a strong web presence yet, mimicking something that you like too closely can be a real deterrent to your business. Here's something else to think about, your overall domain name. A strong brand generates referrals. Think about your brand separate from yourself. People love brands. People eat brands. They wear brands. People are constantly telling other people about the brands that they love. With that said, you can't tell someone about a brand that you can't remember. So if your last name is hard to spell or pronounce, then it's probably not the best brand or URL name to use. Have something that is easily recognizable. The shorter, the better. Now, when it comes to defining your brand, I usually use these starting questions as a way of establishing where I should start with my brand and making sure that I answer these questions so I know where you want your brand to go, and these are questions to ask yourself as you're setting yourself up. The number one question would be, what is your firm's mission? What is your purpose? What is your drive? What gets you up at night? What are you trying to achieve and accomplish? What is the benefit for a potential client if they were to choose your firm over anyone else's? What do you bring to the table that is different than what your competitors are doing? What do clients think about your firm, or what should clients think about your firm? What are the adjectives that they should attribute to you and what you do? What qualities do potential clients associate with your firms? Once again, those would be the terms or adjectives that is best described about you. Next, we're going to go into choosing a logo or creating a logo. In short, a good logo is simple, memorable, timeless, versatile, and appropriate. So it's something your potential clients will easily recognize. It features something unique without being overdone. Think about your logo. Think about how, okay, for instance, think about the McDonald's logo. when you think about McDonald's, you automatically see the golden arches or the shape of the M or the yellow or the red color scheme. Coca-Cola has been timeless. It featured roughly the same red and white logo since 1885. Your website will evolve with technology. That's a given, and that's something that we help you with here at Lawlytics. But your brand should be here to stay. Longevity is key. A good logo doesn't just go on your website. It may be featured on your business cards, your letterhead, potential item like promotional items, pens, notebooks, cups, sponsorship banners, basically anything promotional that you do or any other media accounts. It has to be versatile. You have to be able to read and visually represent in almost every different way possible. Does it work when it's stacked? Does it work when it's shaded? If it only works in one color, it's not going to be great. If I can't shrink it or grow it easily, then it's not going to work. It should be scalable at any size, both horizontal and vertical formats. Here are some questions to make sure that your logo is effective. Basically, can it be more than one color? If you had to produce it on a different color background, will it still work? Can it be scaled down to the size of a postage stamp? Can you scale it to the size of a billboard? And can you print it on reversible color backgrounds and different things? If your logo can't hold its own in black and white, then it's probably not the best logo. Here's another thing for attorneys to consider. Attorneys often gravitate towards typical legal images, the courthouse, the pillars, the gavel, the scale of justice. But think about all the logos you already know about that have nothing to do with the product that they represent. Apple's a good example. Computer logos don't have to show computers, and Apple doesn't. It's an Apple, but it's iconic and you know it anywhere. Car logos don't have to show cars. Subaru, for example, is the Constellation. Dodge is the logo of a Ram. So it could be appropriate for your firm without being the traditional law-based icons. The next thing that we're going to discuss when it comes to your brand is your company's tagline. Does your law firm's tagline capture your brand? You might be able to recognize some of the taglines for these popular brands on the slide. For example, M&M's. It melts in your mouth and not in your hands. For Lay's, bet you can't have just one. And for Dunkin' Donut, America runs on Dunkin'. Interestingly enough, though, without the brand logo printed, the pink and the orange are effective, and even without seeing the logo, you know that that's a Dunkin' Donuts box. Here's an example that always stuck with me when it comes to taglines. I grew up in South Florida, and we had a very popular law firm down there, and their tagline was, after a 911, call 411. And they created a bunch of jingles that played on the radio stations, and they would repeat this line constantly. And it was very short, it was easy to remember, it rhymed, and no matter what, to this day, whenever I hear someone say the words 911, I immediately think of the tagline and repeat the words 411. So now that we've talked about some basic design considerations, in February we'll dig deeper into the elements of design that can have a psychological effect on your potential clients and encourage them to engage with you. We'll discuss choosing the right kind of typeface, what colors mean, and what they can say about your firm, the various shapes of your logos, and how that can affect a potential client's perception of your firm, as well as examples of how to make your content readable using parent-child stacking of your content, and so much more. With that said, I'm going to turn the mic back to Dan.
Thanks, Sophia. Well, everybody, we are just about done here, and we're now about 2 hours and 20 minutes into this. Thank you for sticking with us. We're going to get to questions and answers in just a moment, so if you have anything that you'd like us to address, please put it in the GoToWebinar questions area. We have gone over a lot of information, and if you're just getting started or trying to figure out how to reboot your criminal defense marketing if it's not working right now, the great news is that you don't need to remember all the details of what we've gone over today or implement all of them at once. The important thing is to get started on the fundamentals. And if you're wondering where to start, we can help. And if you're already well on your way, next month's criminal defense webinar in our Grow series will provide you with some actionable items that are easy to implement and over time can significantly move the ball forward and create sustainable revenue for your practice. Before we go to questions and stop this recording, I want to just mention that tomorrow morning we are going to be doing a webinar, same time, same place. You register at lawlytics.com/webinars. This webinar is on reputation management for lawyers, and we're going to be going over a reputation management piece that we're starting to offer, and it really gets to the heart of how clients perceive you and your firm online and how to make sure that you have control over that narrative. We also have a bunch of other practice areas coming up in this START series this month. And so if you practice areas other than criminal defense and want to check those out, those are also at lawlytics.com/webinars. Last week we did a webinar in this series specific to DUI defense. Now obviously there's a lot of crossover between DUI and criminal defense, but the examples that we went into in the DUI webinar, if you didn't catch that, may be worth doubling back to check out on recording, which is now available for you to register. I want to thank Sophia, Rachel, and Victoria for your presentations, and thank you all who attended and endured for this 2 hours and 20 minutes. I hope it helped, and I hope to see you again soon. And with that, let's advance the slide and see if there are any questions. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any questions that have come in, and so if you do have questions and you're just not able to type them in fast enough before we end, feel free to contact us. If you're a member already, you know where to find us if you need help with anything, and if you are not yet a Lawlytics member and are looking to get additional information, feel free to schedule a meeting with us online. It's very easy to do through the website. Thanks to everybody and have a great day.